In just a few minutes, I'm going to show you the #1 secret ingredient to making your Dall-E characters consistent. This is the hack I've used inside ChatGPT to make dozens of consistent characters for my stories, like Keisha, Claus, Red, and Beauty. But first, we have to set ourselves up with some prompts. If you saw my last video in this series about how you can use ChatGPT, Claude, or Gemini to retell public domain stories, you may be all set for this step. You may already have your story ready to go. But even if you don't, fear not. I've got a prompt right here you can use to generate a new story in seconds. All the prompts we'll be using today are in the description below, so head on down if you want to copy and paste those for later. I've got my story right here. Today we're working on creating images for Dumbling and the Fateful Feathers. I generated my story with ChatGPT and then I polished it up with my own editing. And if any of you are interested in how I edit these stories, let me know in the comments and I'll consider making a video about that. Maybe there's even an AI tool or two I could try out to compare. Anyway, here I am in ChatGPT, and I'm simply going to attach my Google Doc with the story and copy and paste my prompt. We're generating character descriptions first. This section here is where I'll add some details specific to this particular story. We've got several characters: Dumbling, Brother 1, Brother 2, and Dumbling's father, the current king. There are a few more characters at the end of the story, but to keep this video short and sweet, we'll stick to the main characters. Of course, you can do any of this manually to use your own vision. Sometimes I give a bit more guidance as to how I want the characters to look, but it's not really necessary. Chat will fill in all the details for you. There, we've got descriptions for our main characters all ready to go. Now we're ready to start generating the image prompts. Again, I'm going to copy and paste my prompt right here in the same chat. Depending on where you're planning to publish your story, for instance, if you're creating a tall video for a YouTube Short, Instagram Reel, or TikTok, you'll have to change the aspect ratio from 16:9 to 9:16. I'm creating a traditional wide video, so I'm using 16:9. And of course, feel free to make this prompt your own. Adjust the character count if you want a shorter or longer story. You can also change the style of the image prompts from 3D animation to anime, for example. Or maybe you want photorealistic artwork or 2D cartoons. That's an easy tweak to make. But this is just a starting place. You do you, boo. Edit this prompt to your heart's content. As you can see, chat is generating away. Unless your story is super short, it probably won't go on for the entire text. But as soon as it's reached its limit, you can just tell it to continue on with the next section. You may have to do this a few times, but it'll go fast. In real time, this part only took about 6 minutes, but I've sped it up here because I know you're excited to get to the best part, generating the actual images. Okay, listen up, because here's that character consistency secret I was teasing you with before. Over here, on the left, I've got some of my favorite custom GPTs saved. This one is great for creating multiple consistent characters in the same scene. If you've never used custom GPTs before, you won't have any favorites saved over here, so you're going to want to click on Explore GPTs. In the search bar, type Consistent Character. As you can see, there are lots of options you can play with. But this one here, Consistent Image Storyteller, Multiple Characters, is my personal favorite. It's got 3 little characters in the icon image. If you want to save it to your sidebar, you click the 3 dots here. Mine says hide from sidebar because it's already saved, but it'll say keep in sidebar here instead if you haven't saved it. Click Start Chat, and it's time to start making some images. Okay, so first we're going to grab our character descriptions from before and paste those in. Then I'll just add, these are the characters we'll be working with today. Let's start with the first character. Use a 16:9 aspect ratio. It's not the end of the world if you don't specify the aspect ratio at this point. These are just going to be reference images. But I usually end up loving them and want to incorporate them into the video later, so I may as well make sure I can use them from the get-go. Oh, and I always forget to specify the animation style too. As you can see, this is 2D art, not 3D, so I should have put that in, but no big deal. I'll just ask Chat to do it again in a 3D style. There we go. That looks good. Now, you can have it generate all the characters at once if you want to, but I like to have a reference image for each character so I can make any adjustments as I go. I also like to have extra images if I want to Photoshop something together later on. Brother 1 looks good. I don't like those extra characters in the background, but they'd be easy enough to get rid of if I had to. Brother 2 looks good too. I'm gonna try correcting the clones in the background, but honestly, I find that the more you ask ChatGPT not to do something, the more it ends up emphasizing those things in your images. But I'll give it a go. And yeah, we've got a whole pack of kings here. Like I said, sometimes it's just best to ignore the flaws, and it's just easier to use Photoshop or Canva later to make corrections. But I don't have to use any of these images until we move on to the scenes for the story, so let's move on to our first scene prompt and see what happens. Okay, as you can see, we're still getting the extra clones in the background. I could remove these, or I could just pretend those are guards standing back there, but I'm going to try one more time to lead Chat in the right direction. Sometimes if I emphasize more of what I want versus what I don't want, Chat gets it and comes through. It's like the law of attraction working right before our eyes. Let's see. Fingers crossed. Yeah, there we go. The less I have to Photoshop, the better. Okay, let's download this image and move on. When you hover over the image, the link to download appears in the top right corner here. Okay, let's copy and paste the prompt for the second image and see what happens. I don't love this image. The feathers kind of blend into the scene and don't stand out enough, and there are far too many feathers. That's one thing ChatGPT needs to work on. Getting the number of items right in an image can be a challenge sometimes. I'm gonna try again. Okay, so this image is better, but there are still too many feathers. But I can totally Photoshop out the extras easily enough. And it gives me a little flexibility as to which feathers to keep and where. But I'm going to try one more thing because sometimes with complicated instructions, it's easier to prompt two separate images and just Photoshop them together. FYI, I'll give you a brief glimpse of my super easy Photoshop process for these images at the end of this video. But you should subscribe if you don't want to miss my Photoshop deep dive, because I'm planning an awesome video sharing all of my tips and tricks, and I've been using Photoshop for more than 20 years now, so I've got a lot of knowledge to drop there. And all the new AI features Photoshop keeps rolling out are only making everything so much easier for anyone to use. So hit that notification bell too if you want to be the first to know when that video drops. Okay, back to image generating. So I'm going to see if we can get a close-up of the feathers on a neutral background. Great, that works. Now let's describe the king's pose. And now he looks like he's making a kissy face. Too much pucker. Let's try that one again. Okay, so the lips are not what I was looking for, but the hand is exactly how I wanted it. And I love the magical sparkle that was added here. I can definitely Photoshop those feathers into this scene. Plus, the king blows feathers into the air 3 different times in this story, so it's not bad to have extras that I like. Okay, the third prompt is kind of complicated, but sometimes Chat's image generator, which is Dall-E 3 at the time of this recording, by the way, sometimes it surprises me. So let's see what happens. Yeah, so we've got Dumpling here, but the 2 brothers were left out. So no big deal. I really like this shot, and I can just create another image of the brothers separately. So let's do that now. Okay, so this isn't exactly what I was looking for, so I'm gonna give it one more go. But actually, as this image is generating, I just thought of a way I can use this image if the next one isn't any better. And yeah, these brothers are even more straight on than the last ones. But I do kind of like their expressions better in this one. They're more determined than happy, which I think works better for the story. I'll download both of them and decide later what one I want to use. I'm sure I can make it work. Don't worry, I'll actually cover that in a future video, but for now, let's move on to the next scene. Okay, copy, paste, go. Let's see what we get. So I kind of like this image, despite it not really being what we asked for. But he looks a little inconsistent in his face here, so I'm gonna ask for another one. I won't mention that though, because as I said before, ChatGPT and Dall-E isn't the best with negative prompts. But I really want that over-the-shoulder point of view that I described in the prompt, and then I won't have to worry about his face anyway. Well, that's getting even farther away from what I was looking for. Let's try one more time. Sometimes it helps to be super detailed, so I'm describing what an over-the-shoulder POV is supposed to look like. Much better, don't you think? Okay, let's download that. On to the next scene. Not gonna lie, I really love this, but Dumpling looks so young. I know I'm being a total perfectionist, but let's see if we can make this better. I'm emphasizing how much I love the composition, so hopefully we'll get something similar to this. Yeah, I definitely prefer the first one over the second one we got. But I think I can merge these together. The lighting and composition are similar enough. But the second one could definitely work too if I were being less picky. Okie dokie, let's move on to scene 6. That's pretty perfect. I can easily crop out the 2 extra brothers on the right, and I'm just going to add one more scene that should be easy to create. Let's see the king's excitement as he's declaring Dumpling the winner. Great, that works. And that's the thing. It's always easier to get one character's scenes right, but the more characters there are in each scene, the more likely there will be mistakes. So if you can see a way to just add another image to show the characters' reactions separately, that's probably your best bet, at least for now. But there are always improvements being made, so the images and Dall-E's understanding of the prompt are only going to improve. Let's do one more scene, and because I know that we had trouble last time with all these characters in one scene, I'm going to generate a few images rather than just one. So I'll start by editing down this prompt. We'll just have the king in the first scene. And those hands are weird. He's only got 4 fingers. So I'm going to ask Chat to regenerate this one. And even though I didn't say why I wanted it regenerated, we still got the same problem. Okay, let's try one more time, letting Chat know to work on the king's hands. Well, one of the hands looks better. Okay, now I'm going to ask for another image of the brothers chasing their feathers. Let's see if we can finally get that side shot I've been asking for. Nope, they're still running right towards the camera. I'm relentless. I'm gonna try again. Nope, the first one was better. Sometimes the more you ask to change an image, the worse it gets. So I'm gonna leave well enough alone. Now let's see how our next frog scene comes out. I like it. Awesome. So to differentiate this feather scene from the others, I'm just going to ask Chat to show the feather lying on the ground by the trapdoor. And that's not quite what I was looking for, so let's ask for the trapdoor to be lying flat on the ground. Okay, that's much better. I love it. So I'll use these 3 images for this scene instead of trying to cram everything into one image. Great. Okay, well, I've got a bunch more images to generate, but I think you get the point. So I'll do a slow scroll through the rest of the images I generated for this project, so you can pause and read the prompts if you want to. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments below. But just to recap, here are 3 things I've learned about generating consistent characters that might be helpful for you too. Number 1. All in all, the most important thing I've learned about generating consistent characters with ChatGPT's Dall-E 3 is that you have to find a balance between being specific and confusing things. The more details you give, the more likely you are to confuse things. But the less specific you are, the less consistent things may be. I've learned to let go of the little things like clothing changes, for example, in order to make sure the images match my story as best as possible, because that's what's most important to me. You'll have to decide what details are most important for your projects. Number 2, the next thing I've had to learn was to go with the flow and keep it simple, stupid. If I see a great image but it's missing something critical, instead of just beating a dead horse, I can just make a separate image for that. I can also tweak the story a bit if need be to make sure my imagery doesn't conflict with the text. And number 3, creating consistent characters isn't as perfect as I'd like it to be, and sometimes it can be frustrating when you just need one simple image and it's not coming out right. That's when I take a break, work on something else, and try again later. It's actually kind of surprising how well that works. I come back and get the best image ever using this same exact prompt. It's like ChatGPT needed a break from me, too. Okay, before I go, I am going to give you that sneak peek I promised you of how you can easily use Photoshop to fix up these images. But you should subscribe if you don't want to miss my Photoshop deep dive, because I'm planning an awesome video sharing all of my tips and tricks, and I've been using Photoshop for more than 20 years now, so I've got a lot of knowledge to drop there. And all the new AI features Photoshop keeps rolling out are only making everything so much easier for anyone to use. So hit that notification bell too if you want to be the first to know when that video drops. Oh, and make sure you check out this playlist because that is where we are creating the entire story of Dumbling and the Fateful Feathers from start to finish right here in this playlist, so you can see the whole process and create your own story from scratch. Happy storytelling!